this morning, sun kissed my face. Grab my coffee, life's a fast-paced race. I know. I put on my shoes, but no time to waste. Headed out the door, no stress, no stress. I'm feeling good now, but my groove is late. A brand new day, just let's begin. Easy Monday motivation. Don't try to slow it down. We keep moving to the sound. Easy Monday motivation. Sit in the rhythm. It's deep in my soul. Fantastic energy got me in control. Oh, hear the beat drop. You know we won't stop. Trust the process. Climb me to the top. The top. Anything else? I need some more. Each step forward. Easy Monday motivation. Every day we touch to the ground, positive, my body, that's all one, drawn by, feel the line, easy Monday motivation, we are all about you, so good, it feels good.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Easy Monday Motivation. It is your boy E coming with you with the crew that make it do what it do. My lady, my liege, Johnny, and my homeboy, the Chocolate Drop, CT. How y'all be?
I'm good. What's going on, y'all?
I'm good. What's that? Are you frozen or are you stuck? I don't know which one.
I was trying to say if I move, if I stood still, if it seemed like I was frozen, but I wasn't. Really,
it did.
It did. Did it make you nervous?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I deal with technical difficulties. My whole life is technical difficulty. I am a technical difficulty, so I'm used to it. What up, Mama? How's it going? Hey, place to be. Being motivation as we are, so it's wonderful to have everybody checking in. It's a beautiful opportunity to be live with you like we do. So we do got to do our check-ins before we had this conversation. But before we do, I want to make sure that you like, subscribe, follow, get into the groove with us. Easy Monday Motivation. We are motivation. We're here for you. So I want to check in first with the Queen, Johnny, my liege. How are you doing? I know recently there's been some traveling with a travel partner who is also on the screen. So what's been going on?
Yes. Things are going good. I traveled. I was in Plano, Texas for work. It went so well. It was just an awesome trip. Had time to bond with my coworkers, my peers, and then the work itself was really good. And let me tell you about this one right here. It's been a minute since I seen CT in his element. Like, as much as we interact and all that stuff, it's been a minute since I actually seen him facilitate. And when it was over, I was like, you know what? You're pretty good. You're good at this. I forgot how good he was, if that makes any sense. And it was dope. And I was sitting there with a coworker, and she was like, wherever he's talking, I'm going to be there. If he's starting a church, I'll go to his church. Whatever he's doing, I'll be there. Cause that was the first time she had seen him. And, but it was dope. It was really dope. I had a really good time. And then my daughter plays softball. So I was able to see her game on Sunday. And they won. This was the best game all season. It was like they were going toe to toe. They came back from like being 4 points under, and they came back and won. And so now the championship game is tomorrow. I was so proud of her. So this has been a good week.
Nice.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Nothing's
Shout
happening.
out to the winners, the whole team. Everybody does they thing. I'm so proud. Johnny, proud mama out there, and CT doing his thing. CT, what's up with you, my man? I know there's so much going on in your space right now. How your week been?
Man, listen, I am running 2 worlds right now. So it is
Mhm.
while it is exhausting, it is incredibly what's the word for tonight? Like I'm like excited is not it. Like
Mhm.
there is this anxious expectation of something really great.
Anticipating.
You know what? I'm gonna tell y'all this. I had my first, so every good coach has a coach. And I had a my first real coaching call with this new coach that I have. And y'all, she CT'd me. When I tell y'all, she used some of my stuff on me and I didn't see it coming. Man, I
Did
promise you, I was
she?
almost in tears, like, oh shoot, I got a breakthrough right now. I was like, what is happening?
Did
Like, so
she?
listen, if you don't have a coach, like there are coaches out there. I am one of them. I'll be available November 13th. There are coaches out there that want to be able to help you find like that next thing. And the thing that she amplified in the spirit of movies, she she basically said there is no spoon. So I know we've talked about the movie Matrix before. And in the second movie in the Matrix, where he's being asked to move the spoon. It's the first one. He's been asked to move the spoon, and he's trying really hard to make the spoon bend, not realizing that it wasn't the job to bend the spoon. The job was to bend himself because there is no spoon. And she hit me with that 1-2 today. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. So when I get to
Mm.
have experiences like what I had with Johnny Malige and that team out there in Texas, recognizing it's his practice and getting an opportunity to use my gifts and talents and skills in a way that really is authentic to me, even inside the box, has been just incredible. And so I'm ready to be, as they say, free. Give us free. I'm ready to
You
just
ready?
be free to do my
Mhm.
thing. So got about 30 days left. We're gonna be responsible, honor what we need to honor, and get to what we need to get to. I also want to say shout out to my family. We had a death in our family, our cousin, and
Mm.
he was laid to rest this last week while I was in Arizona. And I just want to say thank you, Melody, for representing our home while I was out traveling, so that we had somebody from our home being able to say how much we love and care for family. And this was sudden, and so it wasn't something we expected. But you know, when
Mm.
you have a loss and family comes back together and people love on each other, it really is a special and amazing thing.
Yeah.
And so if you are out there and you have not reached out to somebody that you love and told them that you love them, I want to encourage you to go tell someone that you love them, that you love them. And if y'all got beef, squash it and go tell them that you love them and reconcile. And then last on my update, I just want to say that I was so close, Easy Money Motivationers, to getting Johnny on tape saying something that she wasn't supposed to say, and the only thing I got on tape was, "I love my husband." Like, but y'all know, like, if she would say, "I love my husband," what came before that was nothing other than that. And so I just want to put it out there, Terry. I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're listening. Mama, I know you heard this. I know that we keep giving Johnny this like smooth pass on this show, and I just refuse to allow her to just keep
Oh,
going
yes.
by with that little smile and the, Johnny, my leave and fluff. No, people, she is our, like, I need y'all to give her a name. We got chaos and we got mayhem. I need easy motivationers. That's your homework assignment. That's your task to finish out season 3. Johnny, my liege, needs more than a my liege, and she needs more than a fluff. We need her mayhem/chaos name. That's your test. That's my update.
And
Back
he
to you.
kept trying to catch me, like, in the act of doing something crazy.
Damn.
He would sneak a picture. He would pull out his phone to record. I'm like, "No, don't try to get me. Don't try to get me."
Oh,
Didn't
wow.
work. It didn't work.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you got an Inspector Gadget on your hands, or Inspector what is it? Crusoe coming after you the whole time. So you might want to be careful, Miss Pink Panther. Crusoe is on you. So no, that is funny. CT, you are silly, man. I definitely think I do want to give a shout out to the fact that, you know, when you are in your gifts, man, like things just happen. And I know you'll continue to work within your gifts, and, you know, condolences to your family. I know, you know, loss is hard as we go into these holiday seasons, and we got to deal with a lot, you know what I'm saying? And then on top of that, you have tragedy, and you have heartache, and you have pain, and then you still have struggle, you know, because right now, like you said, you know, you splitting your time, you splitting your mind, you splitting everything to make sure you can get things done. So that's definitely a beautiful thing. So for me, your AOC, so, you know, I've been working through some like relationship stuff. You know, look, I'm gonna open up a little bit. Like, I've been working through relationship stuff, trying to figure that stuff out. So, you know, I've been pretty consistent for the last few months. You know, trying to pursue situations and make sure I understand things very well. They have bore enough fruit to try to do a vacation. So I'm gonna go on vacation at the end of the year and see, you know, what happens if, you know, we go somewhere, you know what I'm saying, and how people act when, you know, you put them in a position to enjoy themselves and have a little freedom, because, you know, those be the real tales, you know what I'm saying? Go somewhere. So yeah, that. And then you know, the fish tank right now is on filth, floor, and filth. That's exactly what I feel like. Not really going to say I'm happy about it. As I look at the fish tank, I'm like disgusted with them. I look at them with such disdain. It's such a horrid image to look at my fish tank in that way. What?
This took a twist. Why? What is going on?
Oh, I'm just saying it's nasty. I need to clean it.
That bad?
Oh, I was gonna say, week after week, it's like the fish tank is crystal, and
Yes.
this is the first time.
Well, my fish now have decided to be nastier, because you can always tell. So I'm definitely a little disappointed in the tank. So I'm just, you know, that's on me. I'm gonna get to it. I revealed just enough. I don't know. Hold on.
We have a hand raised.
I'll get to your hand. And Lemmy is doing really good. He got some nice green lusciousness going over there. You know what I'm saying? Doing his thing. So we happy there. Scotch Wee is doing real nice. Well, hold on. I got you. Scotch Wee is doing real nice right now. We're pretty busy. I got a private Mediterranean dinner popping off next week, so we're gonna have fun with that. I can't wait to make these Greek meatballs. Just cooking them makes me so happy. So I can't wait to like put together this whole wonderful whipped feta cheese with the pita bread and the meatballs and the fresh veggie salad. I'm so excited for this wonderful. It's gonna be so refreshing. I can't even imagine how fun this is about to be. But yeah, so outside of that, you know, Scotch does taste good. And I guess I should answer CT's question. So what's up, CT?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for an opportunity to ask a question in this phase of the program. It's a highlight for me. So, noting that most of our episodes start with, at least in your section, hey, let me you know, fish tank, so how might the new relationship be impacting the fish cleaning? Is what, you know, just, you know, insight into potential fish neglect, because you're having to share your time.
Attention is going somewhere else, is what you're saying.
That's what that sounds like.
Okay.
Because the historical significance of this conversation is history suggests one thing, and we're hearing something different. So what
I can always count on you. I can always count on you, CT.
That's a very good question. I would never attribute any neglect of my own personal responsibilities to any other of my other responsibilities. I would just have to be holistic and say that it's on me for not actually taking the time to do it. I have been I have been pondering whether or not I want to put the reverse waterfall back in there, or if I want to put the other ship back in there. I want to take the coral reef out. So a little bit of indecision is creating a little bit of procrastination in me that typically wouldn't be there because I would just clean it. But if I'm gonna switch the stuff out, I don't want to clean it and then have to suck all the stuff out and then, you know what I'm saying, switch the stuff out. So, but no, I am, and I was just at the pet store yesterday. Being honest, I was just at the pet store yesterday looking at other setups. So, because there's a 55-gallon tank that's on sale right now. I could upgrade. I was thinking of that. Yeah. So, yeah. That's really what I've been thinking about on the fish.
Yeah, it's inquiring minds just want to know. Sometimes, and it's not you, it's all of us. That at times we can be preoccupied. I believe that's the word I was looking for. Maybe with other things. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing
wrong with that. Sometimes
there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Question, Johnny. Second question. I noticed that you have some fancy new earphones. Where'd those come from? Those, any motivation for why those exist? Just
yeah. Well, they're not new. They're actually beat ones. They're very old. Yeah, you most people have seen me walking around the halls of hallowed places with these things on in avoidance. So I would say.
So it's a hallowed place. We've seen them before, but the Easy Monday Motivationers and our worldwide audience just never seen them, and they just happen to show up at the same time that this new relational.
It's not. No, there's no. All right, so hold up. I'm gonna go ahead and take care of that. There's no correlation between the headphones in a relationship. Now, there is, though, however, a correlation between the headphones and me being able to do this. That's right. Because my original setup wasn't allowing for me to go whenever you would say certain things, and then like whenever you would act up, I could tell that. See, like I can play sounds and stuff again, so I had to like play with my setup a little bit, and then this allows for me to really not have to keep fidgeting with my earphones like I was doing before. Because you see, they slide out because the earbuds and stuff don't really work for me. So I got into a comfortable space to be able to have this conversation today because I really want to be able to talk about my rights and how people can encroach upon my rights, being invasive with their questions sometimes too, right?
Yeah.
So CT, I'm gonna kick it over to you so we can talk about today's subject.
I was waiting. I know I'll just be sitting back waiting for it to go.
I always find a tie-in, don't I?
That's right.
Here's what I always know is that no matter where we go, we end up where we're supposed to be. And to be clear, just like we did last week, the idea is that one has the right to remain silent. And I appreciate that you did not remain silent when asked the questions around how you are adjusting your particular life based upon things that we just see or hear from you. And to the extent that much of what we are having to understand is that the rights that we have are passed down through something that we read or something that we saw. And depending on how we perceived what we read or what we saw determined what and how the significance of those rights were based upon how we lived out. So if I saw my happy for you, whatever put you behind on your cleaning. Look at the care and the love and the feed. Look at that. I'm telling you what, you have the right to have new headphones, a relationship, and a dirty tank. So we have the ability to recognize that when we have conversations about how we got to where we are. I'm telling you, I'm not sure where this pod is going to go tonight, but I promise you, I am going to be not good. So when we think about the history of the country we're in, and in particular, this conversation really being guided by the idea that there are some things that we are able to do, some things that we say, I have the right to do. And it didn't just happen because we decided to. Now,
Yeah.
one might have a discussion later in our conversation that says, well, some people have decided that they have rights that aren't necessarily right,
Mhm.
but they think they're right. But we won't go there to start off. But there are some things that we have rights to today, whether it is in alignment with the Constitution or not. There are some things that we have the right to do. And so I would be curious as we start off today's conversation, when you think about historical significance of our rights, what do you most align to? Johnny, let me come to you first. What do you most connect with when I say the historical significance of our rights, coming off the heels of last week's discussion around the importance of rights?
Yeah, the historical significance of our rights. Well, I mean, I can't help but to think about um our ancestors, right? There's so many people that have sacrificed their freedom, their lives, all of that, just so that we can have the rights that we have today. I mean, I don't know specifically when I think about women's rights, like there is, oh my gosh, there's just so much to be grateful for and so much to discuss when it comes to that. But yeah, I think about how much people have sacrificed for us. So just as a woman, even in preparing for this episode, I was doing just like a little bit of research around the history of women's rights in this country, some things that we know already. But I mean, just thinking about like it was in 1960s that women had the right to open up a bank account, but they still had to have their husband's signature. That was in 1960. And it wasn't until 1974 that we
Mm.
were able to have a bank account on our own without having to have our husband co-sign for it. That blows my mind because often when we talk about rights, women's rights, civil rights, rights of African Americans, whatever we want to discuss, we sometimes think about it like it was so long ago.
Yeah.
Right? We think like, oh, that stuff is over with. Why are you even thinking about that anymore? 1974? This was just, I always say, like, this was just yesterday. Like, this was just right around the corner. So when I think about that, historical significance, it is not that long ago that that so many people were fighting for the rights that we currently have today and that we often take for granted.
Is it like, Johnny, I love the idea that you would suggest that this isn't a conversation that is far, far outside
Yeah.
of reach of it having impacted somebody that we live with. And now none of us on this call were born in the 60s. Now, if we, start aging up a little bit, then we get
Yeah.
into a different conversation. But
Right.
it's close enough
Yes.
for us to have some people who lived through a time when the rights that we have weren't actually rights. Johnny,
Mhm.
can you imagine living without the right to vote as a woman? Can you imagine what would that like? Can you just imagine what would that feel like for you?
Well, that's why I take it so seriously.
Yeah,
Right. And
yeah,
I'm not even that person who is very like political, I guess you would say. But I think about those who have fought for our rights to have the right to vote. And that's one of my motivations. That's why I get up on election day as early as possible so that I can make sure I'm there and I'm exercising my right to vote. Because yeah, I mean, so when we think about that, even in 1920 with the 19th Amendment, when it was ratified, women had the right to vote. But that didn't necessarily, like on paper, that included all women,
mhm,
right? But in practice, there were still a lot of rules and different things in place to prevent Black women from voting,
mhm.
or Asian women from voting, or Hispanic women from voting, or any other minority group. And that was in 1920. And it wasn't until 1965 where it was, with the Voting Rights Act that we actually had the right to vote. Again, 1965?
Yeah,
What?
right. I know,
That's
right?
just crazy when you think about that. It's so when you say, can you imagine? I guess I can imagine it because obviously it was before my time, but it really wasn't that long ago. But that I use that as my motivation. So when I am frustrated about the things that I see, or I question whether or not my vote counts, or does it even really matter, and all those things. That reminds me, absolutely, it does matter. And I have to do my part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy,
Yeah.
easy motivationers, as you're listening to the conversation, we would love for you to tap in, provide some comments, be able to give some perspective for us as we go through this discussion, because we know that generationally speaking, most of us are in a specific generation. Next week, we're going to get into a different generational conversation. But in the context of today, I think many of us are in that age frame where we have somebody that is close to us who um, has context for rights being introduced in their ability to make decisions and to choose to do things in this country that weren't afforded to just even one generation right before them. What do you think about this historical significance of rights? What comes to you, man?
When I think about the historical significance of rights, I think of all of the wonderful examples that Johnny just mentioned. It also makes me think of prohibition. It makes me think of um, rights that we currently have that are, questioned or recently overturned, right? Like we have a lot of different rights that through time have been assessed through many different lenses. And when I think about the significance of it, it's the significance of it at the time because it varies. Your rights seem to vary depending on the position of the climate or the population at the time, right? So when people were okay with fighting oppression, then everybody was good to move in this one way. But then when it became a little, I guess, unapproved to fight against certain types of oppression, then people backed down and they didn't fight for those rights. So I really feel like this the significance of it throughout history always lies in those points of what is happening, right? So when we think of the death of kids under the duress of police officers or all of the different things that we see in society, those things impact society and they drive us to make our rights or drive us to fight for said rights. And it's always been those things throughout history that have created the need for right to even be established. So that's the first thing I think of when I think about historical significance of rights.
Yeah, it's almost like, and again, not to quote the prophet Beastie Boys, you've got to fight for your right to party.
Mhm.
I digress. Again, that's the energy I'm bringing to this show. Like the thing that I think that you both bring up is that there is something that has existed where someone had something happening to them that wasn't happening for others, and they were asking a question, why not me? Why is
Mm.
it that one person gets to do or to have something and I not have the opportunity to do so? And then created the question that said, well, wait a minute, why isn't this right my right too? So if you had to go back, like, and be one of, and I don't want to call it an activist, but be someone who was sitting in a seat that was like, well, wait a minute, somebody has this right, whether it was for women, whether it was for, and we'll get into the Civil Rights Act here in just a second, but like if you could put yourself in the seat of someone, Johnny, back in the 20s, who was like, wait a minute, why don't I have that right? What do you think would be going through your mind, and where do you think you would have stood? Would you be behind the scenes? Would you be out front? Where would you be at, Johnny?
Oh man, that's such a great question. That's such a great question. It reminds me of this. I was listening to a podcast with Glennon Doyle. Is it Glennon Doyle who
Mm.
wrote Untamed? Anyway,
Oh,
she was having a conversation with her kids, and this was right around the time of George Floyd and all of those things. And they started talking about history. And Glennon was like, I would have done this and I would have done that. And her kids were like, no, you wouldn't have. We wouldn't have done that. And she was like, what do you mean? Yes, I would have. And she was like, well, you're not doing it now. So what makes you think that you would have done it then? And it was like a gut punch to her because she's like, oh man, I like to think of myself as this feminist, as this person who fights for the rights of everyone. And yet, would I be? Um, so that's interesting. I honestly do not know. I would love to say that I would be one of those individuals but maybe I wouldn't be, right? Because I think about me now. The way that I contribute, I think, is by having thoughtful conversations, by moving the needle forward. So I probably would have been one of those intellectuals having conversations and not necessarily, on the front lines fighting, but I would definitely have to be involved in some way or another. I remember, I forget this time what I was reading, but they were talking about the civil rights movement, and they were just clear to say that everybody counted. Like everything that you did made a difference. So whether you were marching, whether you were speaking, whether you were at the church cleaning, whether you were taking care of the kids while the adults were out, while you were cooking, whatever it was, you contributed to it. And I think that's what's important. So finding whatever it is your space or your corner is in the world and making sure that you're doing your part.
Yeah, no, I think that I didn't have the right to choose class. Right. Right. So like there's this
Mhm,
idea that it comes in layers, it comes in levels.
mhm, mhm.
And E, I don't know if you had anything to add on that. I especially love to hear because I have this idea what chaos sounds like in this question, but I don't know if you want to be ALC, if you want to be Scotch, or you want to be E in how you respond to this particular question. But what is it? Where would you be in this conversation? Would you be out picketing? Would you be, fighting off the dogs? Where would you be at, man?
It depends on what we are fighting for, most definitely, because I'm not going to be on the front lines of the wrong fight. And then the other thing specific to me, I probably would be more tactical and strategic behind the scenes to help bring people together and then to motivate people internally, because I know that most likely I would be a target if I was somebody who was an activist, because that it comes with a certain level of exposure as well, right? Because just thinking of my history, I have supported certain causes, and I've dealt with people who have supported certain causes and have played the strategy part as well as the frontline fighter, and I've seen the conversations and I've seen the death threats and I've seen the things that come with being someone up front or in the background. So it's like, pick the right fight. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, for the right fight, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I'm a frontline soldier. You know what I'm saying? For my kids, I'm a frontline soldier. You know what I'm saying? For certain things, I'm more of a strategy, or I'm a tactician.
Mhm.
And then for other things, nah, I'm not in that fight. Because it ain't my fight to be in. So I guess it would really depend on that. But I guess I'm more versatile because there's certain things I do fight for right now.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
and I think some of this it's personal, right?
Yeah.
The thing that you end up fighting for is aligned and or connected to something that is important to you. It could be in your belief system, it could be your values, it could be somebody that you care about going through something and you choosing to say, you know what, they can't fight for themselves, so I'm going to fight for them. Or they need me to be an advocate, they need me to be an ally, they need me to be an accomplished in whatever it is fight that they're fighting, but they can't do it by themselves. And I do think that as I think about this concept of how historically rights have been put into a situation where they become law, right, is because enough people felt like they didn't have the right to have the thing or didn't have the rights to be able to
Yeah.
in the society that we live in for somebody to choose them in the rights that they had, which is
Mhm.
why you have things like the civil rights movement, where there was some inequities in our society, and somebody was like, "That's not right." And if it is true that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or the Horatio Alger story, where there's this American dream that needs to be brought to the forefront, that everybody has the opportunity to have access to it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it wasn't always true that everybody had the same right to the thing that was just in front of us that we said we had rights to. So I think there's something about this idea that when we recognize something's not working for us, that's when we get into our own heads and saying, wait a minute,
Mhm.
now there's something wrong about what somebody has decided should be my right.
Yeah.
Right.
And
I
I think
agree.
it's important too that and maybe we'll talk about this in a future episode, but that our kids are educated on our history as well. So like E was saying, that we fight for the rights, it depends on what's significant at that time.
Mhm.
Or, I think it's really important for them to understand where we came from, so you have an idea of where you're going. It's so important that they have some idea of what our folks have fought for
Yeah.
the rights that we currently have. It's really important that they educate, especially now, because they are so privileged. That's where I was going with that. Because they are so privileged. I know my kids are. They're very spoiled, very privileged, right? And they have access to a lot of things that we didn't have access to. And they see a lot of freedoms and rights that maybe our parents didn't have. And so I think it's so important that they stay educated on where we've come from so that they won't take those things for granted.
I agree with that. I definitely think that when we think about how rights just change, right?
Mhm.
And to your point, Johnny, like something caused us to choose to vote for this and to establish this as a right.
Yeah.
If somebody can come back years later and go, nah, you don't need that right.
Yeah.
And we didn't truly assess all of the dynamics and changes that would impact that right from the time it was established to the time it's being requested to be changed, then we have failed all of the people that we established those rights for.
Right.
Yeah.
Every
Right.
single time we do that, we have failed all of the people that we established those rights for because we remove those rights at the convenience of those who could whimsically choose something based on how they experience life
Yeah.
in their own isolated pocket. So
Yeah.
no, I'm with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when we start thinking about the nuances of this conversation, like even pulling the thread from last week where we established that the human right, this idea that we all are on an equal playing field relative to humanity, but not always does our humanity have access to the things that our country says our humanity should. And
Mhm.
so when you all think about like and Easy Monday motivations, throw something in the chat for us here. Like when you think about what you have, what you believe, I was gonna say what you believe your rights are, but let me say it differently because I do think there's something I want to get from the two of you all that is spinning around in my mind, and that is this: what rights do you feel like are owed? I'm gonna come to you, E, first. Like are owed to you that you don't have access to, but that you would be willing to fight for?
All right, say it again. That way I can drink it in.
Yeah. What rights do you feel is owed to you? You have the right to do, but you don't feel like you have access to, but you'd be willing to fight for.
Oh, to walk into a place with a whole bunch of money and have to face somebody one-on-one to walk out with all of it. Yep. I feel like I'm denied that all the time. Like I feel like there should be some space that you should be able to go and have a fight club and earn your keep. But okay, all right, let me be serious.
I was trying to.
I know. I'm being stupid. I'm being stupid. So I would say a right that I feel like I don't have access to, though. I don't know. That's a good question
I
because
know that's a tough one, CT.
I mean, it's probably something in the tax code that I'm not aware of. But outside of that, I'm trying to think. Well, you know what though?
Mm-hmm.
If I think about society in America versus I think about society in some other countries, I think the right to healthy food as a child is something that I would 100% fight
Love that
for and believe that we don't have access to, and that is something that is most critical to the infrastructure of our country, and that is something that I know for a fact as a whole society, we fail across the board in most places. But you go to certain countries, more affluent countries, it's ingrained in them. The children grow up not eating bad food because they are taught to eat good food, and it's not promoted to eat bad. And
That's a
they
good
get
one.
access to this food, and they get it's in their, and they feed each other the food, and they cook the food, and they learn all of the healthy benefits of it. So they have a great connection with eating healthy and living healthy and having a clean life. Oh yeah, that's something that they enforce in these other countries, whereas we have to fight for access to healthy food, even though we have the right to send our kids to school, even though we have the right to pay for free lunches and for different meal programs for our kids. We don't always have the right and the access to the best foods. So that's
that.
me. That was a good question.
That
You
was a
made me
great
go. You made me go deep in there. So I see you,
question.
CT. Good dig. Good dig.
I figured that's one of those questions that, I think as our show continues to evolve, our responses, I think, can evolve too. And
Yeah.
Johnny, I don't know if you have a question to this one, but I almost want to push to you something that Melanie made mention of, especially because you have some daughters who are in a world who you said they're privileged, and so
Yeah.
there are some things that maybe they just think they have access to, um, because they never had to fight for it, or it's invisible to them, and so it's just a right that they assume that they are entitled to. But not everybody has always had an entitlement to the rights that we have today. So as you think about how you motivate your daughters to stay like present and think like, no, 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 boo boo, we didn't always have it like this.
That's
Right?
right.
How do you motivate? How do you encourage?
Well, one, I just wanted to say to E's point, I started laughing not because it was funny, but because it made me think about, you've seen those videos where they feed children from other countries the
Uh-huh.
food that they feed our kids, and the kids' reactions are like, "What is that?
Yeah.
You eat that?" Or like, or they take a drink of soda and they're super pumped up because they're so hyper, and then they crash at the like within 30 minutes or something, because yeah, it is just,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But to your question, CT, I think we've always done a pretty decent job of trying to keep our kids very well balanced, and like, yes, you do have these rights, but they were not always afforded to us because we share with them like what we know about
Yeah.
history, right? I mean, for example, my daughter was born in 2006. You know, Barack Obama was the first president that she ever heard of, that she knew of. And it was a constant reminder to her, like, this is not normal,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
He is the very first, and this is so not normal. And do you know the significance of that? So just sharing with them the history, or even the right to a fair, even though it's not always fair. We're going back to that. The right to a fair education. The fact that you can go to school, especially as a female, that you can go to school and learn and have a right to choose which um what you want to major in college, what you want to be when you grow up. All of those things are not were not always afforded to us. And to be honest with you, I'm afraid that we're going to end up right back there again. And
Mm,
so those are the things that when I'm that another thing that motivates me to get out and vote, to make sure that I'm educating my kids, because that's what I'm afraid. I'm afraid that we'll end up right back there again, how history repeats itself. And I don't want to see that happen. Where
yeah.
now that we have, we're put into a box and we're locked in and expected to do certain things that we may not want to do just because we are female.
Listen, Johnny, I appreciate that there is a a way that we have to continue to remind our children. Can't do me a favor, because I was thinking about, as I even asked the question, the comment that Miss Melanie posted about our children. It is very true that for their growing up, one of the things that we were incredibly intentional about was that our children grew up better than we grew up. They had access to things that we did not have access to. I always felt like the privilege of our lived experience is that Melanie taught in the hood and our kids went to suburban schools. Melanie still had chalk on the chalkboard, and our children had iPads and smart boards, chalk in the classroom. Like the things that we had to experience. Yes, the
Right,
things
it's
that
just like
we
blankets,
had
right?
to experience. I think it was really a blessing for our children, even though sometimes they're not listening. They didn't always get it. But like we were focused on making sure that there was a well-rounded way that they experienced the world, because we also had instances where them as young black men playing in the court, playing basketball or football in the court, they got the police called on them, not for any other reason other than they were outside playing and somebody didn't understand why they were there, and them having to justify their right to play outside like any other kid. And that became very difficult at times for us to be able to explain that the rights that you have did not come just because you were born. You would want them to, but somebody had to fight for you to be able to say this is something you could do and then stand up for. And
Yeah,
so I think there is something that we have to all remember, that the history exists because at some point in time somebody didn't do what was right, so somebody had to fight so that they could be right, so that we could actually have access to those rights.
yeah, absolutely. I'm right
So
there
I
with
think
you.
it's important, like as we consider the discussion that we're having today, I'm curious, when you all think about historical figures, and I don't know if you thought about this at all, but historical figures who were significant in your lived experience around how you um, feel like your rights came to be your rights. I'm gonna go first because I get real excited about this particular part of the conversation, and then I'm gonna come to you, and then I come to you, Johnny.
Okay.
And so I love the contrast between these two individuals. One is Martin Luther King Jr. and one is Malcolm the X. And the thing that I would say about the two of them is that they were at the same time fighting for the same thing, but in a much different way.
Mm,
And the ability to fight for the rights of the humans, and most specifically black people in America, was one was a non-violent approach, the other was by any means necessary. And I think there is sometimes the ability, if we give ourselves permission, to know that there are two things that are true at the same time. And sometimes you've got to be chaos, and other times you have to be peace. And knowing when and how is the trick. And right now, yeah, I'm gonna say it just like that. Right now, it just becomes very difficult to know who's fighting for what, and
mm,
how do we know what's right and what's not? Because what we used to say is right, somebody else could come across and say, no, that's not right. Why?
mhm,
Because they've decided they don't want it to be right. And so there is a much different, Johnny, to your point, I think there's a much different discussion that we're having to have in our society today to determine, wait a minute, the rights that somebody fought so hard for, others are deciding, well, you shouldn't have that right again. E, how you feel about that? And are there some characters that inform and influence how you think about this world that you live in and what rights you have?
I would say that you hit the two most pivotal with Malcolm and Martin. For me, I think when I think of rights, I do think of a lot of the civil rights movement act, but then I also think, and this right here might be a little bit more controversial for me, I think about the Black Panther Party. I think about the chaos of not having your rights, right? I think about the militias of people who would go and stand and block their kids to go to school because they wanted their kids to have the right to go to a safe school, right? I think of the fights and all of the people who suffered for everyone to have the right to be free. I mean, I go as far as back as thinking like, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. These are people who are significant to rights because their stories, and it goes back to having to make a choice and fight for the right thing. Like their stories connect to a right or an established law that changed society because of the things that they fought for. So I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, right? I mean, we think of martyrs, right? Like Emmett Till, right? Like we think of all of the things that created the significance of the moment for those rights to be established. That's really what I think of when I think of historical figures.
Yeah. Johnny,
Yeah,
what you think?
that was really good. E stole mine. He stole what I was thinking, but I'm gonna tell you why. Because in college, I had the pleasure of meeting Bobby Seale, one of the founders of the Black Panther Party. It was so cool because we brought him in to be one of our speakers for Black History Month, and we had to pick him and his wife up from the airport. So we had a chance to really have this like one-to-one conversation with him. We stopped at McDonald's and then he ordered McDonald's. After the session, we sat around at Denny's and just had like a conversation. Him and his wife had a conversation with us, a bunch of young people. It's something that I will never ever forget. But what I thought was so interesting about meeting him was that I really didn't realize until then was how educated the Black Panther Party was, the members of the Black Panther Party were. How they started the free breakfast program, how like you were saying, they were walking kids to school because just to make sure that they were getting to school safely. And oftentimes they're so villainized, right? Like they're the ones that there's radicals that caused all this trouble. And they also fought for the rights of all people. They were very, very clear in saying that it just wasn't for the rights of Black people, but it was for the rights of all people who were facing injustice. And I thought that was just so significant and so cool. And it gives us the opportunity to really look at how much when you are a little bit more radical and outspoken, how quickly you can be villainized when really you were just really a hero in your community. Right. And so that was so cool and so significant. And then also too, I think about Muhammad Ali. I was watching something with him the other day and just the charisma, the personality, the way that he stood for what he truly believed in at a time that it could have been very easily dismissed, but he did not. You know, he stayed strong in his beliefs, and that's not always easy to do when the world is telling you otherwise, right? So he was a fighter in more ways than one. So those are two people that come to my mind when I think about our rights. And I like that you brought up those who are those who are actually martyrs as well, because I think about George Floyd, and I think about George Floyd because this was first of all, it was so recent, right? And for a lot of people in our community, we were like, here we go again. But yet it was something that some people could not unsee, right? It was so long that he was facing, that he was actually being held down, pinned down, that it was so long that people couldn't unsee it. And I think it did something to our culture. It did something to our community where it kind of opened people's eyes a little bit, and we started having these really important conversations that we were already having. A lot of us were having with our children. I know we were, and they could not believe what they were seeing, and that these are the kind of conversations that African Americans have to have with their kids and all of that stuff. So it was just that was very significant when we talk about our rights, especially human rights in this country.
Do you think it's fair to say that most people don't actually recognize or acknowledge that they do have rights until those rights have been taken
or encroached upon? Yes.
Yeah. So it's almost some of the out of sight, out of mind in some respects. So I would say that I agree that what happened with George Floyd, because we were captive audiences stuck in our homes.
Yeah.
Because we were already traumatized by what was happening in society, it created a pause where we had no choice but to see it, because there was There was no way we could turn away from it. And I think in some ways, until we see a right being taken that we take for granted, we don't have consciousness about it. I
Yeah.
think most Americans are very right. Okay. Go ahead, Johnny. What do you say?
Oh, and I was just going to say too, to that point, CT, you're right. Until the rights are taken away, and you don't really have you may not have a reason to, right? If you are if you live a certain life of privilege, you don't have to see those things because it doesn't necessarily affect you, which is why I think that had such a huge impact. Because you're right, we were in our homes, we couldn't help but to see it and to hear about it and to talk about it, and so you couldn't look away. There's something that you couldn't escape, and so sometimes you don't have to look at it because you live a certain life of privilege. While, for example, like I was sharing during this time, I was sharing with people, like, yeah, for my kids, we have always taught them, like, if something were to happen at home, the police are not the first people you call. First, you call a loved one. And then if you have to call the police, you call the police. So then that way we'll have a family member here, or at least on their way, in case anything happens or anything goes down. And people were blown away by that. Like, what? Like, yeah, because we feel safer as a family if that rule is put in place,
Yeah.
So if you don't have to view it that way, then why would you?
How you feel about that one, E?
I have a right to fight. That's how I feel.
That's right.
That's what I was looking at. I was like, okay, I'm with it, Mom. We throwing hands.
No, my mama love to fight. Don't ask her.
That's what I'm talking about. Mama, these hands is rated E for everyone. So we
not throw hands.
we're gonna play the game. No, I mean, I definitely agree with you, Johnny. I also agree with Mel that Americans are really rights centric, but not always educated to their rights. And then like they'll try to weaponize their rights against other people, not realizing like, well, hold on, wait. I got the same right you do, man. Like you can't use the right against me. Like there's rights against you using your rights against me. Okay. Like there should be, or so yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
It's like the episode when rights are used in the wrong way, right? Like and in many ways that feels like chaos to me. And there would be real mayhem if we didn't get it right. I think this has been a really healthy and responsible discussion as we think about the historical context around this. We're going to get next week into some generational discussion, but I'm really pleased that we're having some responsible dialogue around this. And I want to hit it back to you as we kind of maneuver through the next phases of our discussion. But I have the right now to be silent if I wanted to.
Hey, you know what though? You also have the right to be applauded for a wonderful conversation. So go ahead and let's go ahead and I think I got it now. All right. I mean, I think some music played or sound played. I don't know.
We heard it.
Yeah, I can't hear it, but I know you guys hear it. So great. Yeah, but no, this has been a wonderful conversation. Very compelling questions. I think really having to look at our rights from a significant historical standpoint really draws lines to them, right? Not necessarily going, what are your rights? Like, okay, yeah, but let's really break down what rights you're aware of, when rights were impacted, who drove them. Like, yeah, looking back through history to say like, well, originally there were no rights. It was just nature and the natural right of strength is right and survival. But then we got to a place where it was like, no, we can be civilized and we can actually establish some basic rights and then human rights and then civil rights and then all these other rights. And we got wrongs too. So I love it. So I typically would go to you first, CT, but I think we got to give you a little bit of a break today. Unfortunately, because Johnny, what you got?
Oh, yes, the record scratch. The record scratch. I love it. Well, this month, I said last week, it will be all about voting. So here I am again. And earlier in our conversation, I made sure to mention that it wasn't until 1974 when the equal sorry, let me say that again. In 1965, I was looking at the wrong number. It was 1965, the Voting Rights Act. But since we're there, we can talk about 1974 too, the equal credit opportunity. But it wasn't until 1965, y'all, that we had the right to vote, legally had the right to vote. And although there were still some things put into place um, that prevented us from doing so, I keep saying those years because, y'all, it was not that long ago, okay? We cannot forget about that. It was not that long ago. We have 22 days until election day. Early voting has started here in Ohio. It started back on the 8th. We have to exercise this right. Um, and I mentioned earlier also too that I will be completely honest that I am afraid that some of the rights that we are afforded now will be taken away from us, including the right to vote. So I just want us to be really conscious of that. And so, Cam, please, can you show this? I'm gonna put the link to this in our chat. It's already in the description of the episode. So here you can go and check out and see. Make sure you are registered to vote, and also make sure you check out where your voting. What's the word I'm looking for, y'all? Where you will vote. Thank you. Voting location. Well, I couldn't think of the word location today. Yeah, where your voting location is, because maybe you have moved or whatever it may be. So you can put in your first, last name and the county you're in, and it will pull it right up. So we'll make sure that we post that as well so that you can check it out and send it out. Send it to people. Share it, because we gotta have to exercise our right, y'all.
Yeah.
You are 100% right, Johnny, my liege. We got to make sure that we are here exercising our rights, exercising our minds, exercising our right to get out there and make a choice. And good call out on that, Mel. The Ohio Supreme Court race is hot, so make sure we get to cooking. And
Yeah,
with
just really quick, because we always talk about the presidential election, but we can't forget about our local issues as well. So check them out, and you can even see a sample ballot if you're unsure when you go to that website as well. So check it out. All right, I'm done.
No, good plug. So with that, we want to know, what would grandma do when we talk about the significance, the historical significance of our rights?
Listen, Johnny, thank you for that reminder. And grandma is an advocate of making sure that you get out and vote. And a part of the challenge that grandma says we have in our society is, first, she's not in this moment saying, listen up, baby. No, she's like, sit up in your chair and listen up. Because if there is anything that is more important, well, there are things that are more important. But grandma would say in this moment, the one thing that she wants you to focus on is, in the context of your rights, she would tell you, you must evolve. That's grandma's word for the day, evolve. And grandma would say, history would tell us that the reason why we have the rights that we have today is because there was this E word. There wasn't equality. Even though all men were created equal, we weren't always treated equally. And she would say that as we are considering this time, you have to know that somebody fought for the things that you didn't have access to, because there wasn't the equal rights or no equality for them back in the proverbial day, if you will. And because there was no equality, they didn't have a voice. And because their voice wasn't being heard the way they needed to, they had to do some things to fight for their rights. They had to lift their voice. Sometimes their voices were angry. Sometimes their voices were in advocacy. Sometimes they used their voice because there was a recognition that there was not equality happening for them, so they could not evolve. But when they did use their voice, what they found was the O. And the O said, now I have an opportunity to see a future that I would not have seen before if I had not lifted my voice. And because there were new opportunities out there, it allowed for you and I, Johnny and E, Cam, and the EMM family. It allowed for the L to come to life. It allowed for some legacy. Some folks who are coming behind us, and those who went ahead of us said, wait a minute, if I'm going to have somebody that's going to be able to have access to what tomorrow has to bring, I can't forget what they did behind me to create the opportunity for me, because they raised their voice because they didn't have the kind of equality that they needed. And I want to be careful about this next word. And this next word is the V. Is that some people screamed victory. You got the right to vote. You had the right to do this and the right to do that. And yet we are in a society today where somebody is trying to take away a right that you thought you had. So you screamed victory too early. Friends, we aren't in a place of victory yet, because there are still some who are coming up from behind us who we need to make sure we're securing the legacy for them. And that legacy only comes when we allow ourselves to make sure that we are providing the opportunities that are there, because we continue to use our voice so that there is equality in the environment. And the only way, Johnny, that we get to this is that we continue to do that last E. And that last E is to educate ourselves. As they say, knowledge is power. And the more educated I am about what is happening, the more I read about what's happening down ballot. It doesn't just mean I'm voting for a president, but it does mean I'm voting for city council. And it does mean I'm voting for mayors. And it does mean I'm voting for Supreme Court justices. And I'm still putting myself in a position where I haven't seen a victory yet, because I got some children that need to know that the opportunities that I have access to, they're going to have access to. And those opportunities only come because I wasn't silent. I used my voice. And because I used my voice, we get a little bit closer to a place where there is some idea that there is some equality in our world. And so if you want to feel like the history is your story, you must make sure you evolve so your rights continue to be your rights. Thank you, Grandma.
Come on with it, Grandma. I see you dropping them bars, Grandma, talking about evolving and all of that stuff. All right, so I you know, it's always a clean conversation, you know what I'm saying, and I definitely love it. So I want to get to your message from your AOC, and like I said, while we talk about rights, I want to talk about the wrongs. You know, if you're using rights to justify your wrongs, you are wrong. And there are these notions of rights being, in some senses, they create an obscure line from how you determine certain civic virtues. Like, how do you really hold people to virtues when, if I have authority that you don't have, I can enact rights that don't ring virtuous to you, right? So there is this thing where what's right for me can be wrong for you. And if you don't have the access or the authority to exercise said right, you can create a problem for other people. So that's where rights can be wrong. Be prepared to know what you think is right can be wrong, and be open to both sides. So that's your message from your AOC. I thank you guys very much, very, very much. So with that, I think this has been a wonderful conversation. Okay. Like, we are cooking, and with Johnny, I'm not going there with you today. We are cooking. It is always going to be an opportunity for us to, yes, there will always be something that we can be wrong about now. So I just want to go ahead and show people like how bad it can be when somebody's rights is wrong. Because, like, let's say you did the wrong thing and somebody had the right to do this to you. Cam, play this video for me, please.
You to 2,500 consecutive life sentences plus 1,000 years. Once you pass away, you will receive an attempted escape charge with an additional 200 years being added to your sentence, which you will begin serving in the afterlife once you get to hell. Should you be reincarnated after your death and return to Earth as another person, you will be arrested at birth and you will spend your entire next life in the state penitentiary.
That's what can happen if the wrong people have rights to tell you what you did wrong. So you want to be careful with the wrong rights and the right wrongs. That is That is your message from your AOC. Now, this has been a wonderful conversation. This has been beautiful. Thank you all for the comments. Thank you all for the love. And CT and Johnny, as always, man, you guys just always kill it. I want to come to you, Johnny, for your final thoughts.
This was a good episode, man. I'm still over here thinking about this conversation. I can't wait till next week. So there you go. That's all I got.
All right, CT, final thoughts, my brother.
Man, listen, I think there is something rich about our discussion, and if we give ourselves permission to keep going deeper, that we can rewrite some of what our history has been around what our rights have been, and maybe the generational of the conversation doesn't mean that we repeat the same discussion again, because what was right when I grew up doesn't seem right anymore, and that don't seem right.
I'm with it. Hey, my final thoughts is shout out to the crew for 50 episodes, y'all. We are 50 episodes in season 3. Big things as always, continuously trying to grow and build every single episode, every show. So thank you guys. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, make sure you comment, make sure you share 5 stars on all of the platforms because we're here for y'all. Thank you. And I would like to go ahead and say, wish you good night, and you can just chill until the next episode. Thank you very much.
Peace, y'all.